Welcome back to the Barrel Talk Podcast, back with another episode. I know we're in the midst of the playoffs, second round, got some crazy game sixes coming up in a couple of days, but I want to take a little look at free agency preview. We've done some mock drafts and everything else like that, but with the majority of season teams already starting their offseason, I really wanted to kind of dive into just the free agency pool, not making any crazy predictions or anything else right now. We'll get down to that episode later down the line. But just kind of want to talk about some guys that are free agents and where I think they could possibly end up and what I think they could start doing. But we can hop right into the first name being LeBron James. Right. I think LeBron James during this course of the playoffs showed us that he can play as long as he wants to play at a high level, contending title level. It's just what is the next step for LeBron James? I think LeBron ends up staying. I think there's probably maybe a 20% chance maybe that he's playing for a different team next year. But I think the best case scenario for Bron is to play in LA next year, unrestricted free agent. I do think he'll test the waters with possible couple of situations. I think that's just best in his own interest to test the water. I think maybe Cleveland going back home could be an interesting one. I'm hearing like New York from some media outlets. I think New York would be a terrible idea just with everything they have going on. Like, how are you even getting to New York? They already are paying their guys a ton, and I think they already have their set in stone core. And unless they went out some crazy way in the finals or in the conference finals, I don't think LeBron James really finds his way to New York. Golden State's been the pipe dream. I think that would be the best case scenario for like ratings in the league, because you get LeBron and Steph Curry in the same market in one of the biggest markets in the sport. I think that would just be a entertaining thing. I don't think that would make Golden State contenders, but it really comes down to like, does LeBron James want to compete for a title? Not saying the Lakers are crazy far away. I think the Lakers are probably his best case for getting back to the finals outside of Cleveland. I think if you add him to that Cleveland team and whatever you do with James Harden, I think that could be a real interesting situation out east. But you still have Luka Doncic. Whatever team you go to won't have Luka Doncic. You still have Austin Reeves, who I do expect them to re-sign, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. But if they can find a way, if I'm LeBron James and I'm focused on winning another ring, I'm thinking about possibly taking a little bit of a pay cut so we can add and upgrade at the 5 spot. I like what Jackson Hayes gave them, has a depth piece, but I don't like him being your starting center going into next year. Aiden, get him up out of here, because the effort he showed in those games against OKC was terrible. Yes, he had his good moments, but he also had a lot of bad magnified moments in these playoffs. So I'm looking at if LeBron James could possibly take some sort of smaller deal to possibly add 1, 2, or 3 guys to this team, because you got to think Rui Hachimura is also a free agent who was phenomenal for them this playoff run. So I'm looking at LeBron James being a free agent if he does want to spend the rest of his career in Los Angeles, which I do think that's the case for him. I do believe him taking some sort of kind of pay cut, hometown discount, like something like that for the team to possibly get back into contention. I think it'll be in his best interest if he's trying to go win a championship. Now, get your bag. Like, don't be out here playing for the men. Like, but go out here and maybe instead of 1 year plus 1, if you want to add the plus 1 to it, because that's what he's been doing for some time, maybe do like 1 plus 1 for like 40 and having a little bit more money to like bringing Rui Hachimura back. Also possibly add another better fitting center in this free agency pool as well. Possibly look at adding to this team in the draft, possibly finding a way to possibly trade up in this year's draft, like things of that nature. The Lakers are going to have to get creative this offseason, but in my opinion, I think LeBron James is staying in LA. And I do think him maybe taking a little bit of a pay cut to possibly get this team even better to kind of go compete for a title. Because yes, they got swept by OKC, but with no Luka and a banged up Austin Reeves, like some of those games were a little bit close. I know they didn't have J-Dub, but like JJ Redick is a phenomenal coach. He's proven himself in my eyes to be a really good coach in this league. And I think with LeBron and Luka, I still believe with LeBron still being able to play and elevate to that level still, that this team could still be a dangerous team come playoff time if they can get the 5 spot figured out and maybe add maybe another defender or two through free agency or through the draft. I think this is a loaded draft and the Lakers could take advantage. Getting on to this next one, Trae Young has a player option. Looking at this, super interesting because Wizards have the number 1 overall pick. I'm hearing some rumblings of them possibly trading, getting some assets. For me, Trae Young, I think he could opt out, sign a long-term deal with Washington, but I think he's just going to opt in for this year, see what happens with Washington throughout the course of the season, and possibly see what his options are next free agency cycle, because he could use a really good bounce-back year and maybe the Wizards are a playoff team or a play-in team next year, and he's playing really, really well. That increases his value and his dollar amount going into next offseason. I think that would be a fine thing for Trey to do, is to just opt in, play this year out, be healthy this year, possibly help the Wizards get into the playoffs. You're looking at more money than you would this offseason. Yes, it's a big bet on yourself kind of thing for a player that's kind of narrative around the league is in the waters right now, but I do think Trae Young will opt in and stay with the Washington Wizards. Zach LaVine's an interesting one, because I think Zach LaVine might be at that point in his career where he's willing to take a pay cut. He's made a ton of money over his career. He could be willing to take some sort of pay cut and opt out of this player option that he does have and get to a contending team. Now, will Zach LaVine turn down like $50-something million? Probably not on the player option, but it seemed like his time in Sacramento was just like not enjoyable for him, at least from the outside looking in. So I do think he would be one of the more surprising ones of like, I want to go to a competing team, somebody who's never been on that competing level team, and I'm willing to take a pay cut. I've made a ton of money on over my career. I'm getting up there in age slowly, but I want to get to a situation where I can compete while I can still contribute at a high level. And Zach LaVine is one of the better scorers in this league. I just think he's been bouncing around from bad team to bad team and bad situation to bad situation. But I do see a world where Zach LaVine opts in or out of that. James Harden kind of just, I think he does the kind of takes the LeBron route. Him and LeBron kind of do this 1+1. I can see them doing that in Cleveland. And I feel like James Harden's a guy who's played himself into a long-term deal once again with how he's still producing at this level. But I think he's going to end up staying in Cleveland, whether he signs a long-term deal or just takes the player option that he's under right now. CJ McCollum, another interesting one. I feel like raised his value a ton this playoff run against the New York Knicks, but still is getting up there in age. CJ McCollum, I think Atlanta should keep him. Honestly, I think he should go back to Atlanta, because you looked at Jalen Johnson might not be fully ready to be the number one option on a playoff contending team. So I'm looking at CJ McCollum as somebody who could be the number one on some nights offensively. Still, he shows you still has a lot left in the tank, and I think CJ McCollum should go back to Atlanta or possibly go to another team that can use a little bit more offensive firepower. I can see an interesting world where, like, it depends on how much, because he kind of played his way into getting another pretty decent sized contract, I feel like, with his clutch shot making against the Knicks, to where I don't know what his dollar amount is going to be in free agency or what teams are going to be interested in him. He's somebody to where, like, if the Bucks are keeping Giannis, maybe the Bucks get interested in CJ McCollum. Has kind of another secondary scoring option, another vet and a spacer in that locker room that can play the one next to Ryan Rollins as well. I think that would be a fine fit. Like the Bucks, Atlanta, any team that can use kind of some offensive shot creation. A team like Detroit should be super, super interested in somebody like CJ McCollum, another vet to add to this team of young guys, somebody that can close games when Kate Cunningham might not have it going some nights. I think CJ McCollum's luxury is that he can come off the bench for you, he can start for you, he can run the point, he can run the two guard, he can space the floor, he can do a ton of different things for any situation he's in. He's such a versatile player offensively and with what he can do, and that's the luxury of being a good combo guard in this league, is where I think CJ McCollum fits on any single team that needs a bucket getter down the stretch. I can say the same thing about Chris Middleton. I kind of put those two hand in hand. They were in Washington. He gets to Dallas in an Anthony Davis trade. He's an unrestricted free agent. I think Chris Middleton, I would not be shocked if I'm looking at next year's playoffs and Chris Middleton is like getting buckets late in the game on a competing team. I think Chris Middleton still has about a 1-2 year window still in this league. And I think Chris Middleton can still give some good playoff run. I really, really do. From what CJ McCollum and Marcus Smart have showed us, that these guys that kind of get not so much like pushed out of the league, but like they get to these situations where their salary dumped because of a contract that they signed, and then it's just like kind of a weird window for them, still have a ton of value. Marcus Smart played his way into like a good contract. I think Chris Middleton can do the same thing next year for a competing team, and I expect him to go to the competing team. My friend Cole, who I do the podcast with as well, he's always talking about, oh, we're getting Chris Middleton back with the Bucks, and I wouldn't even be shocked. I wouldn't even be shocked by that at all. Now, getting into Kristaps Porzingis. Kristaps, man, he's just such a... Me being a Steph Curry fan, tuning into a lot of Warriors basketball, I was like welcomed into the Kristaps Porzingis experiment and just the what it feels like, right, of watching Kristaps Porzingis on your team. It's like some nights he's just not playing because he's not healthy, and then there's other nights he's like, is Kristaps being the best player on the floor right now? and he fits Golden State perfectly with what they want to do. And I think they didn't make that trade and trade Jonathan Kuminga for Kristaps. They didn't think that they couldn't sign Kristaps long term. And I'm intrigued by a team of Curry, Jimmy, and Kristaps and whatever else they can add. And I think Kristaps is asking for a crazy amount of money from Golden State either, because he does have kind of an injury history, and that's well documented. And I think he does end up finding his way back to Golden State on some sort of like 1+1 kind of deal, kind of matching his contract up with like Curry, Butler, Steve Kerr. Like, I think that's just the best case scenario for Kristaps. So I think that's where he's going to be able to increase his value the most, is in Golden State. Isaiah Hartenstein, this is an interesting one because he's on a team deal, and the team deal is about $28.5 million for them to pick up, and they have Lou Dort on a team deal as well, which is somewhere around $16 to $18 million, if I'm not mistaken. But looking at Isaiah Hartenstein, he is an interesting one because with the way AJ Mitchell's playing, you still have Lou Dort this offseason on a team deal. You're already going to be flirting with the second apron. You have 2 first-round picks this year. Do you let Hartenstein walk and either draft a center that falls to you, or you trade up and go get a DeMar? You know what I'm saying? I'm seeing those be in the world of Isaiah Hartenstein with OKC. Great player, but Isaiah Hartenstein hasn't been the most available guy in his stint in OKC. So I could see a world where they want to save money. You're probably going to have to pay AJ Mitchell a ton of money because of the way he's playing. And then you have Lou Dort to pick up. I think Lou Dort's value to this team might be a little bit more than Hartenstein because you have Thomas Sorber, who I know is more of a project big as well, but you can put together your 2 first-rounders this year and go trade up possibly with, you can trade up and get anywhere you want with OKC's draft capital and go get a DeMar and be like, we have Chet and a DeMar for our future. We're set. We don't even need to touch that position no more unless it's some depth piece. So, like, I think Isaiah Hartenstein is going to be playing for a new team next year because it makes too much sense financially for OKC to let him walk and let him go to a new team because they have 2 first-round picks to possibly go out and add a center. And there's some pretty solid center options with the DeMar, whose stock is rising, who they might have to trade up for because I don't see him falling to 12 or 13, which is their pick in the draft. I think they have 12. So, like, they might have to package up both their first-round picks and try to move up with a team, which I think could possibly be on the table for OKC because I think a DeMar's fit in OKC is definitely there, and him and Chet Holmgren in the front court would be insane. Andrew Wiggins on a player option. Could see him opting into that. I think he has a really good high value price tag as being a 3-and-D wing that can put the ball on the floor, score at all 3 levels. His value, I do think he stays in Miami just because he just seems like he fits that culture in Miami still. Tobias Harris, unrestricted free agent. I think he goes back to Detroit after the season, signs like a more team-friendly long-term deal, maybe like a 3-year deal to end his career there in Detroit. Fred VanVleet, going to take the player option, stay in Houston. They're kind of in like all right, once we get Fred VanVleet back on this team healthy, we could be looking at a whole different Houston Rockets team. Anthony Simons is an interesting one because I feel like the Boston Celtics like somewhat like raised his value. Like if you were like tapped into like that trade with Vucevic, the Boston Celtics could have really used a guard of the caliber of scorer Anthony Simons is. Just kind of has a bad rap, not a great defender. He kind of needs to get to a team where he can like prove himself. He's kind of getting put into that Cam Thomas conversation a little bit, I feel like. But I think Anthony Simons is a very talented scorer. I think he's not the best defender, but I think he has the athletic ability to be a good defender, a solid defender in this league in the right situation. I think he needs to get to a team that values his scoring. I think he would be perfect for a team like Denver on a 1-year deal because they could use a little bit more offensive firepower, more of an offensive punch off that bench. I think Anthony Simons with his scoring ability can definitely do that. So I think a team like Denver would be a perfect option. Maybe even a team like Detroit. Chicago could bring him back, but I think with 2 first-rounders this year, you have number 4, you have a new GM, you're going to have a new coach. I think they're wanting to have a clean slate of this roster with $60 million in cap space. So I think Anthony Simons is going to be playing for like maybe a Denver Nuggets. I'd really like to see that. Or I think he fits into the same category of like a CJ McCollum to Milwaukee if the Bucks decide to keep Giannis. They're going to be looking at a scoring punch that they can add to pair with Giannis on the perimeter. Anthony Simons can definitely do that, but does have his defensive limitations. Draymond Green, interesting one. I think he's staying in Golden State. He just brought back Steve Kerr. Doesn't make too much sense for him. He's been Golden State for 13 years. I think he just ends up staying in Golden State. It makes too much sense for him to leave at this point in his career. John Collins is an interesting one because I think John Collins stays in the Clippers. Just makes a lot of sense. They need front court depth, especially now. I think he has a good role there with the Clippers because they don't really have a lot of athletic ability guys in that front court right now. Obviously needs a full offseason to see what the Clippers roster is looking like next year. But I think John Collins has this really good fit there in the Clippers. Jonathan Kuminga, man, I kind of like him in Atlanta. That fast-paced up and down style of play with an athletic wing, as young and as talented offensively as Jonathan Kuminga, who showed you in the playoffs this year that he can provide that defensive impact. I like his fit in Atlanta, and this helps Jonathan Kuminga because I feel like with what hasn't happened for Zachary Richardson, kind of opens the door for them to bring back Jonathan Kuminga on kind of a good contract for him. I think he fits Atlanta's style of play, and he can come off that bench and kind of be able to just rock out. And I think that's something that he wasn't able to do in Golden State a whole ton. And this style of play really suits him better because he plays really well off Jalen Johnson. And with all those guys out there with Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Dyson Daniels, they have a lottery pick this year. Like, they have 2 picks this year in the first round. So, like, I'm fine with them bringing back Jonathan Kuminga and to be like, if Richardson doesn't work out, we were able to find a Jonathan Kuminga, a diamond in the rough, and a Kristaps trade that was able to kind of fill that Richardson role and be better suited for what we want to do and run as an offense. I'm perfectly fine with Jonathan Kuminga staying with the Atlanta Hawks. I hope it happens for him. Getting into some other ones, Norman Powell, unrestricted free agent. He's another one that fits into that CJ McCollum, Anthony Simons, like any team that could use a bucket getter at the guard position. I think he'd be a really good fit in Milwaukee as well. I could kind of see him staying with the Heat, though, just because don't know the future holds for the Miami Heat and what Tyler Hero's value is in the trade market. Norman Powell is getting up there in age, so if the Heat wanted to move off of Tyler Hero, I could see a world where they bring back Norman Powell. But I can see Norman Powell going to a number of different teams. I think he could fit well really in Detroit. I really like the fit with him in Detroit if he can get there. Just being another bucket getter, probably coming off the bench for them next year. But he's somebody that has that play style of what Detroit is playing right now. And I think he'd be a really good addition out there as a scorer. But he's another guy that is like CJ McCollum, Anthony Simons, teams that need scoring, that contending teams like Denver, Detroit. I could really see those fits right there. Like, Norman Powell is another guy that his highest impact on a team is a team that's winning. You didn't really see his impact there on a Miami Heat team that's like in the play-in, just like struggling, but you saw it on those Clippers teams that were competing in the playoffs. Like, you saw how good his impact was. This is a former All-Star we're talking about now. So, like, I think Norman Powell is going to be a really good addition to another team, whether he stays in Miami or not. If I had to make a prediction right now, I think he's just fun in Detroit. I think Norman Powell in Detroit could be a nice addition off that bench as a bucket getter. Looking at some of the other ones, just a bunch of kind of just role players right now. We kind of talked about Lou Dort in the Isaiah Hartenstein conversation. I think he gets brought back to OKC. I think he means too much to them. Has come from the trenches when they were a bad OKC team. Like, he means a lot more to the team than I feel like Isaiah Hartenstein. I think they'd keep a hold of Lou Dort going forward. Rui Hachimura has played himself into a ton of money this offseason with his ability to just be a scorer at all 3 levels, provide you solid defense. He's an elite level role player. That's what he's played himself into. He's going to get a bag. I would like to see him stay with LA, but I don't know. I feel like some team could possibly come out of nowhere and offer him a bag. I don't know exactly what that team is, but I think Rui Hachimura is going to get paid nicely this offseason in terms of like elite role player kind of money. Getting into Mitchell Robinson kind of fits in that same category. Mitchell Robinson is an elite role player, especially for the Knicks. I really like him with the Knicks. I feel like him and Karl-Anthony Towns complement each other a ton. I'd like to see him stay in New York, but I could also see a team giving Mitchell Robinson a bag because I feel like that's the position in the league right now that's the most thin, is the center position. Austin Reeves, player option. He's going to opt out of that, right? How much money is Austin Reeves going to get? We were kind of talking about this in the group chat the other day. I don't know. I'm always in between on Austin Reeves. Great player. I think he wants to just finish his career out in LA and be an LA lifer. I could definitely see that. So I think he would take maybe a little bit less, kind of what I was talking about with LeBron in terms of getting a team that can really truly compete out west. I think it would need to be like LeBron and Reeves taking maybe a little bit less than they should have to get some other guys in the door to really help bolster this team up to compete with the Spurs and OKC and Minnesota and Denver. Like, all these teams out west, like, and then you got a bunch of teams that are on the come up, like Portland's on the come up, like the Suns are still relevant. You still have to worry about Golden State out of the plan. Like there's just so many teams. The West is so deep to where it's like, and if you get Reeves and Braun to take a little bit less to really bolster this roster, I think it gets really interesting for the Lakers in terms of if they're a contender or not. I think it would definitely, depending on who they would add, push them into definitely contender status. But I think Austin Reeves, he wants to be a Laker for life, it seems like. I think he ends up going back to LA. Kobe White, I think he goes back to the Charlotte Hornets for sure. Traded for him at the deadline. He fits what they want to do perfectly and has some big time moments for them in the plan as well. Robert Williams, he's another interesting one because, like I said, the center position is so thin, I feel like, around the leagues where I feel like he can go a number of different places and be a backup big. Another one I wanted to talk about is Audisumu. He's going to get fucking paid. I hope he stays in Minnesota because he fits that team so well, but he's going to get absolutely paid this offseason. Another young guy in Benedict Mathurin. I think he stays with the Clippers. They sign him to pretty long-term deal. They need as much young talent as they can get on that team, and I think Benedict Mathurin is going to stay in LA, and I think Audisumu stays in Minnesota. At least I hope he does. Getting down the list more, where's he at? I think Marcus Smart. If you can get Marcus Smart to take that player option in LA, huge W for you if you're a Lakers fan, because his impact is still very much there on this team as a vet. And he even showed you he still has defensive capabilities out there on the court, being a leader on this team for LA. I think if they're able to get Braun and Reeves, kind of talking myself into like a Lakers offseason video, but Braun, Reeves taking a little bit less. You get Marcus Smart to opt into that player option. Maybe get Rui Hachimura on a good contract. Maybe add something to the center position. I think we could be looking at something in LA. Duren has probably lost out on a lot of money, but I think he stays in Detroit. I think Mark Williams also stays with Phoenix. Possibly depends on the contract, but with his injury history, not playing in the playoffs, they might be able to get him for cheaper than what they probably expected throughout the season. Hopefully Russell Westbrook gets back on a contending team somewhere or back in Sacramento next year. Being just a Steph Curry fan, Warriors fan, hope Anthony Melton is back with the Golden State Warriors. Where is Peyton Watson? Peyton Watson was kind of the last one I wanted to talk about because it's not really crazy deep. There are a lot of good role players in this free agency class. Doesn't have like the high end like talent in some free agency of the past. Like looking at Peyton Watson, man, it's just like how much money is Denver going to have to work with? Like what is Denver's offseason? I wanted to kind of dive in and make a video about like what they could possibly do this offseason as a team, because it's like, do they have the money to bring back Peyton Watson? Maybe the injury made it to where like you can get him for maybe cheaper than what you thought, but if he was playing the way he was playing throughout the playoffs, you probably don't get bounced around one, and you're probably not having these conversations because he's your best point of attack defender, and with the offensive leap that he was taking around Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon, like it was fun to see like him take that leap. But there are some teams like that can go out and get and pay Peyton Watson for a bag of his caliber, a good 3-and-D wing that can score at all three levels, that finally hit the big time development jump that you wanted him to take this past year, but unfortunately got hurt. Like he's another guy to where it's like, man, it's either like he stays in Denver or he gets like an absolute bag from a team like maybe Chicago with all the cap space they have and what they're kind of building towards could love a guy like Peyton Watson next to Matas and whoever they draft at 4. Like you could realistically, if you're Chicago, you go out and have like a wing rotation of Matas, Peyton Watson, Caleb Wilson, like you have another pick. You can add Cameron Carter to that list. Like you can get crazy if you're Chicago. And I think Chicago, a team that has cap space that could want somebody of Peyton Watson's caliber, could outbid the Denver Nuggets in a contract negotiation. But I just wanted to kind of make a video talking about some free agency stuff, kind of going down the list of some of the upcoming free agents and where they could possibly go. Some interesting contracts up with like OKC and the Lakers and some of these teams and what their outlook could look like for this offseason. But that is all I have for this episode of the Barrel Talk Podcast. Hope you tune in to future episodes.